Welcome, Valerie. How are you?
Thank you so much, Faith. I am loving being back here with you to have this delicious conversation. I'm loving it.
I'm already laughing because I know what I'm in for.
It's
And I
quite the
love when
ride,
you
isn't
say it's
it?
going to be delicious. I can literally taste the meal.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to be good. And those of you who have been with us for the longest time, you know Shah, but she's been away for a minute. So, Shah, you want to say hi?
Hey guys, how are you guys doing? And then welcome again to Valerie. It's a pleasure
Yeah,
to have you again, on the
Oh,
show.
yeah,
thank you, Sean. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
So Shai is my lovely co-host. We've been together for the longest time from her story too, and I'm glad to have her back. So let's start from the beginning, right? Because I know your beginning is a different kind of beginning, right? Because you cut through all the
Yes.
gunk and you get to the meat and potatoes of things. So tell us, how do the characteristics and the roles of the Anunnaki, how do they differ um, from what we have been told they are versus what you have discovered they are? And why does it matter today?
Oh, this is an excellent question. I love this, Faith. I love this. Well, we have had an interesting relationship with what we would call alien species, yes, on the planet. Some people have had abduction experiences, some people have had visitations, some people have had sightings, other people don't believe it, other people are, undecided. Yet there must be something to it, because in this great huge universe, we can scarcely believe that we're the only ones. It's not likely that we're the only ones. And so if we look at the ancient stories coming out of almost every culture, there are stories of sky people. They wouldn't have had the same terminology that we have today. Sky people who visited, it did many things on this planet, including terraforming and things that looked like miracles because it was advanced technology, including genetic modification of humans, which we can talk about, and that the sky people imparted tremendous knowledge to humans about astrology, astronomy, which used to be sort of one and the same. They got separated later on. About herbology, about agriculture, about building, about science, about mathematics. So even the sexagesimal system that we're on of 60 minutes in an hour, that's all from the sky people. So there is much in our modern day life that is a remnant or holdover, leftover that we still use that came from the sky people. So we cannot summarily dismiss these stories as, oh, that's what some people do. Some scholars, some people tend to say, oh, aliens, no. Yet I was not willing to dismiss any of it, and here's why. When I went to Egypt and I climbed into the Great Pyramid at Giza, I knew when I stood in front of this edifice, I knew that humans did not build this. So I said to my guide, who was trained, right, in Egyptology, as all guides in Egypt, legally, if they're going to take you on a tour, legally they require being a tour guide, and some of them say it took them 4 years to go through to become an Egyptologist, to be able to legally lead tours in Egypt. That story that they are told as they are going through their training to be an Egyptologist is based on the 6,000 year history of humanity that most of the Abrahamic religions teach, so it's a very short timeline. It also is based on still the ideas that came out of the 1800s that this is a tomb, right? This was some kind of tomb, so they call it the pyramids of Menkaure, Khafre, and Khufu. And what we know is that there have been no tombs found in the pyramids, so they could not have been tombs. And one other thing that struck me when I went into
yes,
no tombs have ever been found in the
yes, true.
pyramids.
Even in the museums here in Europe, when we go to the Egyptian sections, there are no tools. It never clicked to me until now.
Yes.
There are no tools. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can't be true that the Great Pyramids of Egypt were constructed as tombs. That cannot be possible. Yet we know that that came from an uneducated guess, the best guess that they could make in the 1800s when they said that. And what we also have found is that there are no hieroglyphs inside of the Great Pyramid too. And that struck me as very odd, because all of the other places that you go in Egypt, if you go to the Valley of the Kings, if you go to Hatshepsut's temple, if you go to any of the other temples in Egypt, covered with hieroglyphs, covered. Inside of this chamber, none. Now they say in other parts of the Great Pyramid, there are hieroglyphs. There are none. There's nothing on the wall, nothing. Now that also struck me as, okay, something is going on here that is beyond what I've been told. Okay, the story gets better. Now I'm coming to you from Mexico. I have a home base in Mexico. Yes. Here, my office.
I love Mexico. When you mentioned Mexico, I just bust. Yeah. That's why I just light up when you mention it. This is a really interesting country. Sorry, go on.
Isn't it? And what many people do not know, Faith, is that there are pyramids here in Mexico as well, constructed on the same order as the pyramids in Egypt, which I found that to be tremendously intriguing. So I went to see them. So I went to the ancient city of Teotihuacan, where there's the Temple of the Moon and the Temple of the Sun. And once again, I stood before these pyramids and I said to myself, the impress that I received intuitively, and as my knowing, my intuition and my knowledge began to congeal, because they both told me, my critical thinking skills and my deeper intuitive knowing told me humans didn't build this. Well, when I was in Egypt, I asked the Egyptologist that I was with, what do you think? Off the record, I'm not going to tell anyone that you deviated from the script they gave you, right? But this is just between me and you, off the record.
Yeah, they don't know if you're going to report them or something, usually
Exactly.
they look at you twice. They're like, okay.
Right. So he and I were having a magical conversation, and he said one word. He looked at me and he said, giants. And he did like this, like picking up the blocks, like they were toys, like they were Legos.
Yeah.
To us, the blocks are astounding. There are tons, each one, and we're talking millions of blocks. So this story was not adding up. The story that they told us wasn't adding up. Many of the stories in the Bible didn't add up too. I knew that the stories in the Bible, one other experience as well, I'll throw into this pile as we're talking about this. I went to Chichen Itza, which is in the Yucatan, here where I have a home. I have a home base here in the Yucatan. And the Yucatan is a fascinating place because it's jungle, Maya, and it has Chichen Itza, the ancient city of Chichen Itza, which was buried under jungle for many years. So they excavated Chichen Itza, and lo and behold, it's an entire city. It's not just one pyramid. Now, this was very fascinating. Thousands upon thousands of people flock to Chichen Itza each spring to see the descent of the serpent of light and shadow, also known as Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. Now, the astrological alignment of this pyramid is such that on the spring equinox, the position of the sun causes it to appear that a serpent is descending, and there's a huge serpent head at the bottom of the pyramid, that the serpent is descending to the world of man, matter, humanity.
Yeah.
But they tell us that thousands of years ago, when these things were constructed, that we were using Bronze Age tools. So shovels and hammers and picks and crude instruments. So I cannot mesh where they say humans were in our development, in our evolution during Bronze Age, and what kind of tools we were using, and the edifices that are on this planet that were built before then. We can't square those two. Something's not.
Something is not. Yeah.
Right.
So they, wherever you go, you see this technology and stuff that is way too advanced, from horse riding, stone knocking, hammer knocking technology that they say was what we had. You know what I mean? So what you're saying, it makes total sense to me. Total sense. Yeah, total sense.
And Faye, I'm not one of these scholars that went to school and is in academia. I'm a regular woman who is very, I read a lot. I've committed my life to understanding humanity, our origins, so that we can evolve, transformation to our highest, apex, to our absolute highest. And I am a person that's really spiritually motivated. I'm not an archaeologist, and I'm not a scholar. I am a deep researcher, because research really brings us a lot of light from yesteryear, and I believe we can learn from that.
Yeah.
So let's add
Valerie, I disagree with you. I disagree with you. There is nothing regular about you. And you are, to me, you are a scholar, that is not based on the definition of what a scholar is. You go to these places, that's, you're a combination of scholarship, theology, anthropology, because that's what they do. You're in these places, and also, maybe it's my African background, but people say Africans didn't have written knowledge. No, the rocks were the writing. You read nature.
Yes.
So you're reading the books, but you're also reading, when you were describing your experience in Mexico and in Egypt, I was just looking at you reading the stones, the rocks, because you're saying I connected with my intuition. I was like, no, she's reading this stuff. She's tapping in. And also we believe that the message you get is because you have I don't know if I should say this now or offline, but
Go for it.
Yeah, I think so. But you have because other people will go to this pyramid and not see a third of what you saw, or not read the stones, because the nature speaks to you on a genetic level,
It's very profound what you're saying, because there are people who want to gain access and they can't see it. And sometimes you wonder, okay, what did I do to get these keys? Because I can see all of this and I can understand it. And it's a soul contract, a soul agreement to share it with people and be a light and say, hey, things are not as we have been told. what we have been told is a limiting story. We are not born in sin. We are not destined to die. We are sparks of the divine. We are absolutely a emanation of the source energy that physics would call the 0-point field, right? We are an emanation of this infinite energy that created everything. And even though we may have been genetically modified by a more advanced, technologically advanced species, that did not make them gods, and that did not make them our gods. Just like we're not gods to people who may still be living in the, let's say, in the jungle with no mobile phones. If someone showed up with a mobile phone in some parts of, even right now, in the Amazon, there are people who have never seen a mobile phone.
Yeah.
Right? So if you showed up with one, you would look like, and then we could talk at distance, that would be, it would look godlike. Yet
Yeah.
it isn't, right? That they too are the divine, and we are the divine. Everyone is the divine. And speaking of African heritage, you know, the Dogon people are the ones who have they have the smoking gun of this entire story, because the Dogon people kept in their literary, in their oral history, the star people. And they said the star people told them about the planets, and the star people told them about Sirius B before Sirius B was discovered by science. And they knew that it was a dwarf star.
Yeah.
And they also knew about Sirius C. They knew. How did they know all of these things with no instrumentality? They did not have, the Dogon people don't have telescopes.
No, they could see it with their naked eye, because, and not everybody in Africa could see that. You see, that's what I'm trying to, like, you can see things that you're allowed to see. They give it to you.
Yes, yes. And I'm very thankful for that. And whenever, I'm very thankful for that. And whenever we receive something great, a great gift, the first thing we want to do is share it. That's why I love talking.
Not everyone, Valerie. Some people put it behind that's why some people struggle. They have to go 100 years to get information that you got one trip to Mexico, because they know, you know, the pure-hearted one, they know the one who will give the message to help humanity. They know, but others, they know your intentions. So you will not get access.
You know, Faith, you know how this works.
Because no matter how hard you try, you won't get what you want. And, you know, unless you're pure of heart. That's for lack of better words. I'll just leave it there. Yeah. Because even your approach, the way you teach, your scholarship, it's got such a different perspective from the way people teach about the Anunnaki and the story of humanity. And also the way you described Enki and Enlil, you know, and how they differ. I'd like us to go deeper into this, because the first show we had, you just flung the door open, because I totally understood what is going on today. We are caught up in a crossfire of the old gods, you know, doing their thing.
Yes.
Can you just take it away, Valerie? You know, how do their characteristics differ, and how do their narratives surrounding the Anunnaki? Because the Anunnaki, they're not just Enki and Enlil.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Many of them. They say there are at least 20 different ones in the Bible alone. Spoken up in the Bible. 20 different Elohim. Well, the Bible calls them Elohim. So because I have a Christian background, I more tend to talk about them as Elohim, Anunnaki, Anunna gods. There are different names for them. Yet most people know them as the Anunnaki. Yet they are in the Bible, and the Bible calls them the Elohim. And in the Bible, it differentiates between El Elyon, which most people think means most high. It doesn't mean that. It means the El that is higher than the others. So like a boss El. Yeah, and most people think El Shaddai means God Almighty. It does not. It means God of the mountain or God of the steppe. So that was the El of the mountains. But remember, the Bible, all of these ancient stories predate the Bible. All of these stories are older than the Bible. The Noah story is older than the Bible. The stories of ancient Sumerian legends, Abraham, all of those are older than the Bible. And what most people have in their mind is that the Bible is the oldest and it's giving it from beginning to end. And they read the Bible like a novel, like Genesis to Revelation, the end. Like Genesis is chapter 1 and Revelation is the end. And that's not at all what the Bible is, right? So right in Genesis, it says, in the beginning, gods. That's Genesis 1:1. God said, let us make man. And Christians want to say, well, that's just the Trinity. That's God talking to Jesus and the angels. Well, the Trinity wasn't invented until 300-400 years after Christ. It can't be the Trinity. Plus, and they're trying to make a doctrine that was created fairly recently when we think of human history. It was only created, about 2,000 years ago? This is 2024. No, it was probably created about 1,700 years ago. 16 to 1,700 years ago, this doctrine was created, which is extremely young in human history. So when we look at the Bible's stories, what I love about the Bible is it preserved for us ancient Sumerian stories, ancient Akkadian, Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian. These stories were preserved in the Bible for us. So I view the Bible as like a time capsule. Like it's bringing to us today what happened hundreds of thousands of years ago. If viewed appropriately, not as a religious book. That's what my whole series on YouTube is about that I'm doing right now. The real God is not in the Bible. It's what the book I'm writing about right now. The real God is not in the Bible. The Bible is not a religious book. The Bible is not a spiritual book at all. And God's not in the Bible. And God didn't inspire the Bible. And God is not the author of the Bible. Now that sounds heretical. I do acknowledge that sounds heretical. I am not unaware.
If they read the Bible, it is not. Because they tell you who wrote the Bible and what inspired the writers and the authors of the Bible, and then the different translations. You know, Valerie, the things you say, I'm just like, she's just reading it. She read the Bible.
Yes.
And she referenced it to different texts. And she's doing you all a favor, since she's an avid researcher. You know, the more you research, the more you know how to look through the nooks and crooks. You know what I mean? And so you're doing everyone a favor and giving them a shortcut, you know?
They don't have to read the thousands of books I've read and go.
Yeah, the Nag Hammadi, the Nag Hammadi text, the Gnostic text, the Apocryphers, and the website you gave us was so beautiful. What was the one which you told everybody they could read? Spirit, Bible?
Pseudepigrapha.com.
There was that one, and then there was one which shows you very quick.
Sacredtext.com.
Sacredtext.com. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing. So for those who want to do it, go the long way, the marathon, go for it. Valerie's doing this, helping you do the sprint.
Oh my goodness. So when we look at the Bible, and I'm not the only person to say this, people have said this throughout the generations, that this book has got to be talking about something other than God. And the Gnostics came to the conclusion that the God of the Old Testament was actually the evil one, and that the serpent was the good one. That's the conclusion the Gnostics came to, that the God of the Old Testament was evil. And
now you're a hetero.
So now this brings us into Enki and Enlil to answer your question.
I can just see my Kenyan people, African people saying, this chick is talking about the nyoka, the snake.
Oh my goodness. Yet, don't doctors wear the serpent twirled around, encircling the
Caduceus.
The Caduceus to this day as a sign of healing? They still wear it. So we still have it. And we know that through many cultures, the serpent has been the healer, the enlightener, the way shower, the one who awakens humanity. That was Enki. The angry one, the one that's kill them all, blow them up. Let's destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, which was a nuclear explosion, not fire and brimstone from God because God didn't love them. No, that wasn't God. These are Anunnaki who had nuclear weapons. They had explosives. And that's who nuked Sodom and Gomorrah, not for purposes of morality. They didn't care anything, but they didn't care about morality. It was a political war, like all of their skirmishes and all of their wars. They were warring on their planet before they came here. The different factions warring to see who would get rulership and power. So they did the same thing here. And it's the same thing we are still doing to this day. Speaking of election season, we're still doing it. Except, thank God, hopefully we don't kill anyone over it. Yet, we still have political wars, religious wars on the planet, which I pray that this work will end. Because there's no need for us to be fighting over these things.
It's ridiculous, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go on.
Yes, so when we go to the Garden of Eden, let's go there. So the Garden of Eden, people think it's this beautiful place that God made to put the first man and the first woman. Whereas what we now know, if we look at science, if we look at biology, we do know that 8 billion people cannot come from 2 people. Now that's just biology. It is not a diverse enough gene pool to create 8 billion people. You need a good 10,000 people to have a diverse enough gene pool, because if it's me and Adam, and then we have kids, let's say we have 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls, and the girls get with the boys, and then those children get with each other, and we already see that there's going to be a degradation, and eventually they're going to not be able to see, they're going to have fragile bones, they're not going to have the same brain capacity. We already know the genetic breakdown that happens, and that is a fail-safe in nature. That if you breed 2 different species, they cannot produce. It will not be that there'll be the offspring of it will be fertile, and that's nature's way of stopping the anomaly so that we don't have a degradation of the biology of the being. You know, nature wants us to be perfect. Nature is perfect. So there's so much built into DNA that the Anunnaki knew about. They knew these laws of nature that they could work and create. So they had many gardens of Eden. They had more than one. They were located in different places, and they were breeding grounds for humans. Now you might say, well, why were they doing that? Let's go back a little bit further with why Enki and Enlil are such stars in our minds, right? And why these 2 infamous brothers are just so, we're enthralled by them and their story. Well, when they came here, there was another species along with them called the Ijiji. And the book of Enoch calls them the Watchers. Okay, so this
Ooh.
is another species. So it was almost like Star Wars. You know how you go into a bar in Star Wars and there's all these different kinds of creatures, and these creatures are from this star system, and these beings are from that star system, and they're all hanging out in a bar drinking and whatnot, and people know that's how it was. It was different right here on this planet, right here on this planet, right?
But
Different.
isn't that still happening today?
It is. It absolutely is, because some of them can take human form. Some are shapeshifters. There have definitely been shapeshifters all throughout humanity. And I don't even know if this is really anything other than advanced science, because couldn't we create a hologram?
Mm-hmm.
And holograms were in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So you can project an image.
Yep, you can.
They just have a greater grasp of physics than we do, right? So when we go back to Adam and Eve and we see that there was a need for them to create humans. Well, why? Why? Because humans, Homo sapiens, what we are, did not exist. And before I tell you about us not existing, there is something very strange about us. We don't have fur. We don't have claws. We don't have fangs. We are ill-suited for life in nature. We have to kill something like a bear or a deer or something like that, get its hide and put it on us to be warm. Why? We're the only ones like that. We're the only ones that require a tool to eat. We have to dig, but we can't dig with our hands. How far in the ground can you dig with your hands? We have to have a tool to even dig, to even get roots out of the ground, like rhubarbs or beets or potatoes. Most things that grow on the trees are too hard for our teeth. We don't have fangs. We're not like elephants that get 6 sets of teeth in their lifetime because they're eating trees, and elephants don't need knives and forks and spoons, but we do. So if you look at several aspects of our nature, we don't have fur, we don't have excess hair. There are many telltale signs that say, what are we? Because we are not endemic to this planet. Something is amiss, because everything else that naturally occurs in nature is perfectly suited for their environment, from monkeys to apes to snakes. A monkey doesn't have to get a knife, right? So that tipped me off to, there's something interesting going on in our biology. What is it? Well, let's go back to the starting point. So there is a book called, you can read about this in, let me be certain of exactly what story this is. This is a very ancient story. It's in cuneiform tablets, and it was translated into English. And it tells the story of the Ijiji, the so-called lesser gods. They were a different species, and they were sort of working for the Anunnaki. Well, the Ijiji, whom Enoch calls the Watchers, they rebelled because they were sort of like a lower class, and they were workers, working, digging in mines and so forth. Now, they say that the Anunnaki required gold, lots of gold, to heal their planet. I don't know if they really needed it to heal their planet. I don't know if they needed it for flying their spaceships. They definitely required gold. And so that's what caused Enki to go down to Africa, South Africa. And there's a book called The Gold Mines of Enki and the Anunnaki, which is written by Michael Tellinger. And it shows you pictures of them, just all across Africa. Because
Michael
Enki,
Tallinger from South Africa.
yes.
Yeah. There was also Credo Mutua. Have you heard of Credo Mutua?
No.
Ooh, I'll send it to you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness. With your eyes and your, yeah. From South Africa as
Pictures.
well.
This is
He was
still there.
what you would call a Sangoma.
Oh yes, the
A
same
healer, a herbalist, but that's the traditional word in South Africa. And he was
Yes.
one of the oldest one. Now he has passed on, he has transitioned. And
Oh.
before he transitioned, he decided to share what was hidden.
Oh my goodness. Is he the
With the world.
Zulu?
Yes, he's a Zulu
Yes.
shaman.
Yes, because
Yes.
I have a dear sister of mine is now in training to be a Sangoma in South Africa, and she hasn't even spoken to many people. She's sequestered. There's no pictures of her for a whole year. It's very intense. It is very intense.
Yeah, a lot of their stuff is hidden. That's why I think he just started sharing it with the world because he knew, because they can see, you know, they know stuff. He knew he was going to transition. So he was like, let me share this. I'll share it with you. But when you mention, the more you're sharing about describing the Enki and the connection, I was and the serpent, I was thinking about the Ethiopians who call the ancient word that they use to describe themselves is the Naga, the Nagusta. And Nagar, when I translated it, because of course I'm not Ethiopian, right? I had to also look into it and read about it. It meant serpent, the serpent people,
Oh.
the Naga, Nagusta. So when you were talking about this, I was like, hold on a minute. Are we also being given a little clue from what you're describing as to who the people of Enki, who, you know, who is Enki's bloodline and who is Enlil's bloodline? Maybe, I don't know, maybe.
Yes, yes, because Enki did come to what they call the Abzu. The Abzu means Africa, the land all the way down to the south. And they call that the Abzu. But they also call the Abzu going deep into the water, in that he has an underwater whole city. And it's still there. And no one can dispute whether it's there or not there, because we have not explored the ocean depths on our own world. We don't have the equipment to do it. So although we've been to outer space, we have never explored the depths of the oceans because we can't do it. Right?
It's there.
Or we haven't developed the technology yet to explore all the way down. So we don't know what's down there. We don't know what we're sitting on top of.
It's there, but I think permission not granted.
That's right. And we do remember that the Navy saw quite a few of these ships speedily moving and changing direction, defying our understanding of physics, and they would go into the water.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're there because even in Denmark here, they have the Little Mermaid. It's like a touristic attraction. And the story, a lot of the Nordic, Norse mythology has stories to do with the underwater civilizations, but they're myths, you know, mythology. There's also Nigeria. They have a lot, you know, the church, they be if you've gone to a Nigerian church, mostly they're trying to remove the mermaids out of the Nigerian women because they're being pulled to the I don't want to trigger people, but and also in parts of Kenya as well.
Yeah, in Kenya, and even in I believe all through the area where Benin, Togo is Mami Wata, the original primordial mother in the ocean, the ocean mother. Every culture has that. Every
Yeah.
culture has that. The Great Mother. And that she is primordial, and it has to do with the waters and the ocean. It's in the Bible too, right?
But
The
what is the
waters.
Anunnaki? They don't talk much about the primordial mothers.
No, yet, because we
Interesting.
mythologized it, I believe, over time, because we didn't know
Mm.
what we were talking about. We didn't know we were talking about technology, and we didn't have the wherewithal, I believe, to talk about spaceships before we invented spaceships. We wouldn't have known. Like Ezekiel saw a spaceship, he didn't know what he was looking at. That's why when he described it in terms, the words that he had for it. And he was seeing spaceships. He went on spaceships. Elijah went on spaceships. Enoch went on spaceships. And they all described it.
Yeah, let's talk about the ascension. Elijah's ascension. Where do you think he ascended
Well, Elijah,
to?
it was a planned abduction. Now they call it the abduction of Elijah. They even call it an abduction. So that doesn't mean that God doesn't abduct people.
See, that's why I love your brain, Valerie, because you just
Right?
read the text. You know, I wonder when people say you're saying, I'm like, no, she read, it's the text. Yeah,
It's all in plain sight for us to see if we drop our filters. See, they put filters on us, they put blinders on us that told us that these are God stories, this is all about God, and God made this book. And you're reading this book like either God is a horrible person or I'm missing something. Oh, and they have a need to justify this God. No matter how horrific this God is, you're reading it, though. God says, kill the women, kill the men, kill the children. This is a horrific God. This God has performed war crimes, has committed war crimes. This God starves people. This is a horrible God. And this God is doing this to his own people as well. So what gives? And then when you find out that this is Enlil, or this is Ninurta, or this is one of the Anunnaki, oh, so I seek to liberate people from an angry God. We're not beholden to an angry God.
No.
God's not angry. The real source isn't angry. It's
No.
love. This I know. This I know. The true source is not anger. It's love. So to go back to your question about Enki, Enlil, the connection, that the ones who were the worker people, they revolted, right? They revolted. There was an
So these are the
uprising.
Igigis now, right?
Yeah, the Ijiji. Yeah.
Igigi,
You
yeah.
call them Ijiji or Igigi. We don't really know how these words are pronounced because we weren't there then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Bible calls it, well, the Anunnaki, the book of Enoch calls them the Watchers. Okay,
Oh my goodness. This is a piece that is left out.
yes.
Because
And the
even
Bible
when you,
calls them angels,
ooh,
but they're not. They're not angels.
please.
There are no angels in the Bible at all. I'm not saying there are no angels. There are no angels in the Bible. So I know that's another heretical statement that requires a whole nother show to unpack, just the angels. So the Ijiji, there was an uprising. They rebelled. They said, we're not doing it. We're not continuing to do this hard work. They have been working for thousands of years because remember, or maybe not remember for people who are new to this information, the Ijiji and the Anunnaki had a tremendously long lifespans. They lived for thousands of years. And when you look at the ancient Sumerian kings list, it looks absolutely absurd because one king will rule for like 30,000 years and another king rules for like 18,000 years. And so scientists or, scholars, they've written it off as mythology. That's not mythology. They lived a very long time. And we would have lived a very long time too. And we did. Like Noah lived, well, not Noah, because after the flood, the lifespan got shorter and shorter. Before Noah, Noah's father Lamech, he lived for 777 years, right?
Wow.
Methuselah lived for 969 years. Adam lived for 930 years. The Bible is giving you clues. It's telling you that these people lived for a very, very, very long time. What gives? And people just kind of write that off too.
No.
But it means something. All these, the clues
Yeah,
are everywhere.
everything means something. Yes.
It means something.
Yeah.
Why
It
would these
means
people
something.
living? How could a person live for almost 1,000 years?
That's too weird.
Isn't that interesting, Shah? Like,
Yeah,
why
it is
aren't
very
people-
interesting.
Why aren't they demanding that their pastor give them an answer? No, you tell me. I'm not going a second further until you tell me how these people lived for almost 1,000 years, because it's right in the Bible.
Mm.
They don't have an explanation for it. Yet,
Yeah.
if you put it in context of the Anunnaki, it makes perfect sense. It was genetic modification.
But also that, like you said before, like you mentioned that the angels and everything, people believe in these things, right? But they don't exist, obviously. But this is what it says, like angels and this, because it says in the Bible, though, right? But yeah, and yeah. So this is like when people study with the Bible, or the Quran, yeah. We were actually just talking about just right before the show that there are so many things it says, but it's not true.
Yes. And
It's
We were also
absolutely.
talking about the Quran, actually. Shah was talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
the Quran. Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because I mean, I'm not like a religious person, or neither is my family. Well, some of my family in Iran are, but it doesn't say anywhere in Quran that you will be killed or you will be executed because you're not wearing your hijab, or but this is what they're doing right now in Middle East. If you're following what is going around the world, especially like in that side of the world, is just that if people speak up about something, they will just especially in Iran right now, you cannot speak up about the things that you like to have in the country, or if you're not wearing the correct outfit, or you're not covering your hair, or then they would just take you. And again, you don't know where they would take your kids or your family, or so but I just mean that it doesn't say it like in the Bible, like you're mentioning, or in Quran. There are so many things that it's not it's not the way it is, but people, again, they believe in these things because they read it and they really believe that it is like that.
But do they read it, Shah? Because
In Iran, like I remember, but I was very young when we moved here, but I remember when I only went up to second grade in Iran, and then we moved to Denmark. In our school, we had Quran in school. And yeah, they do teach us. They do teach the students, and some of them,
but
they're
that's
very
the
like,
trick. What do they teach you versus what do you
they
read
teach
or
you
you
about like
feel?
the government and who is in the power right now,
Yes,
and
you see,
you
now
know
we're
what I
getting
mean.
somewhere. Yeah. I was going to ask you, Valerie, do you think it had something to do with the Gregorian calendar and the perception of time?
That's an excellent question, because time has changed a lot over
Mm.
the years, and our perception of time, and going from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. That's an interesting question. The conclusion that I came to is that it had to do with genetic modification. And here's why.
Oh, okay.
And here's why. Because when the Anunnaki had this whole uprising with the Ijiji, and the Ijiji were like, we're not doing it, we're da. They had a sky council up in the sky. They would go into sort of like, I guess you could call it almost like a space station, right? And there was a sky council, and this council is spoken of in the Bible, in Psalms. In the Sky Council, they would come together and they would discuss what they're going to do. Anu, Enki, Enlil, several members of the Sky Council. And over time, the Sky Council would change, of course, because new people would be in the Sky Council. Well, they had a conversation in the Sky Council, a discussion like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We've got to do something about this because this uprising, so forth and so on. And what they said is, we need to make a being. Isn't this fascinating? Enki says, we need to make a being that can do, because Enki was super smart, scientist, geneticist, all of that. We need to make a being that can do all the work, because the mother god, also known as Ninkharsag, she sided with the Ijiji. She said, they're right. Y'all are working
What was her name
hard.
again? The mother god?
Ninkharsag.
Ninharsag.
Most people, yeah, Ninkharsag, also known as Ninma. Nin means lady, and Ma means Ninti, also known as Ninti, not Ninma, Ninti. Nin means lady, Ti means rib, lady of the rib, which is where you get the story of the rib in Genesis.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, yes. It's all connected. I don't find that anything in the Bible is superfluous. I find that the things in the Bible are pointers, they're clues. So I don't throw out anything, even a rib. Why does it say the rib? Well, the mother goddess, well, we're going to just call them gods and goddesses, even though they were not, they were Anunnaki. This is what they're known as, right? The mother goddess said, we need to give them a break. Enki said, let's create something that can do the work for us. And they discussed and said, well, there's some beings already running around on the planet right now. In Africa, they had already seen furry, another Homo erectus. It was Homo erectus, sort of like the ones they found in the ground in Africa, like Homo naledi, other types of Homo erectus, but it wasn't Homo sapiens. They were covered in fur, yet they were erect. And they said they can do the work for us, but we've got to fashion our form on them. Let us make them in our image. Sound familiar? Because they need to follow the instructions that we give them. So we need them to be intelligent and advanced, that they'll do what we tell them to do. And so they captured many of these beings. Some of the legends and stories say that they were in cages. They captured many of these beings. And they said to the mother, because she was a great geneticist as well, also who I believe to be the angel Gabriel that showed up, Angel Gabriel, who showed up every time someone had a birth. She was a reproduction specialist.
What was her name?
Her name was the same one, Ninti.
Oh, Ninti. Okay, Ninti.
Later named Ninkharsag. She's more well known to be Ninkharsag because her son named her that after her great cunning helped him with winning over, she helped him with a great strategy, so he elevated her and called her Ninkharsag. To me, I don't say that it was a trinity, because a lot of people say Enki and Enlil and Anu, their father. I say it was a quadrinity, because it was Enki, Enlil, Anu, and Ninkharsag. Because Ninkharsag was the great birth mother. She knew the genetics of the womb, fertility, cycles of women. She knew all of that. And she knew artificial insemination.
Was she psychic, or was she like a Shah? But how could she know all this?
Are you hearing Shah? I don't hear her.
Yeah, I can hear her. She's saying, how did she know all these things? How did she have all these abilities?
Yeah.
Oh, because they were an extremely advanced civilization. So she was a reproduction specialist. Enki was a scientist. They had people who were into metallurgy. They had people who knew agriculture. They, like all the specialties that we have now, they had hundreds of thousands of years ago. What we're talking about occurred 450,000 years ago. This planet is billions of years old. So we're talking many, many years ago. And they say that they found Lucy in Africa. All of these beings first came out of Africa. Everyone knows that. This particular being that they went and grabbed They said if we fuse the DNA of that being and us, we'll give them some of our powers and our smooth skin and get rid of the fur all over their bodies. This one is not going to have fur. And get rid of the fangs and get rid of claws. And we want this being to be intelligent, and we want this being to have speech, because these other ones weren't speaking. We want them to have speech. So they did a genetic, and they killed one of their gods. They asked one of their gods, if he would give his blood. They took his genetic material, his blood, and they say clay, which the Bible does talk about the dirt of the earth, the dust of the earth, according to the stories. And they did a mashup. I'm putting it in, colloquial terms, and created this being. Now, the first few that they created were problematic. There were some that it didn't go well. Their genetic engineering at first, they had some mishaps. Finally, they got it to where it was a man, which they called the Adamu. Does that sound familiar? Adam.
Adam.
Yeah.
The Adamu. And
it's not a very difficult trivia. Adamu, Adam.
Right? And they called the Adamu his children Adamites, because they came from him. And then they fashioned the Adamu. And then they created an Eve, a woman who was a woman. Yet, the Sky Council had not given permission for them to be able to reproduce. So at first, they weren't reproducing. So there was a man and there was a woman, but they were not reproducing with each other. They did not have free reproduction rights, I guess you could say. So because the birth mother, Ninkharsag, she had surrogate mothers that they would implant the new fertilized egg into the Anunnaki surrogate mothers. They had surrogacy. They had implantation. They had medical facilities. And when the birth mothers would come to term 10 months, because a woman is pregnant for 10 lunar months. 40 weeks is 10 months, not 9 months. It's 10 months. It's 10 months of 4, right? Well, the birth mothers, which there were only about 6 or 7 of them, they couldn't reproduce fast enough, because you got to wait for a whole 6 months or so, 10 months for the birth mother, these 6 birth mothers to have the next children. So Enki decided that he would give Adam and Eve the ability to reproduce. That was what the forbidden fruit was in the garden. Sex. And the Jewish people tell you that it's sex. They tell you that it's sex in the ancient Jewish stories. Now, the Christians don't say this. The ancient Jewish people say that the forbidden fruit in the mystical societies, that Adam knew his wife, meant he had sex with her.
And what about Lilith, who came before Eve?
Oh, there were many couples.
Oh.
There were many couples. It was not just this one couple.
Yeah,
because everybody knows only Adam and Eve.
And then she was, of course, not obedient. And then came Eve. Or is that not the story?
That's what
I just overgeneralized. But, they say that she was defiant and, disobedient and, and they call her all kinds of things. But
yes. Well, in the garden that they had more than one, there were more than one reproducing pair. There were pairs, there were many pairs, which goes according to it makes sense biologically speaking, because you can't get 8 billion people from 2 people. We would have died a long time ago. It's not a genetically diverse enough gene pool to get 8 billion people from 2 people. Anyone can put that into the AI and get the answer to that. 2 people can't create 8 billion people. So there had to be multiple pairs, genetically diverse enough that they could reproduce. And hence why there were other people. The Bible tells you that there were other people on the planet when Cain left. How could that be possible when the church told us it was only Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel? But the
Yeah.
Bible didn't say that.
No, he did say that because
The
they
Bible
went
didn't say
out to the other lands. Yeah.
and that the people are going to kill me if they see me. What?
Yeah, exactly. He needed to protection.
He had to get a mark on him that says, you're going to be okay. So Enki was the one who they say, and we've got a lot of evidence for this, that Enki had sex with Eve to produce Cain. Adam was not Cain's father.
Oh, there are two fathers, two seeds. I will put enmity between the serpent seed and the other seed. Isn't that
Different
something in the
seeds.
Bible?
That's right. Different seeds. Doesn't it add up? Doesn't it start to add up?
I'm telling you, this is adding up. It's also adding up, the miracles that are attributed to the God of the Bible. You just did, poof, because
and
it was technology. I mean,
it was technology, and we do it. We have surrogate mothers, and we do artificial insemination or assisted reproduction. We do it. So why would we not think that beings figured it out before us? That would only be our hubris that would tell us that, because there could be lots of beings in the world, in the whole universe, that have already figured out the things that we have yet to figure out. Obviously, they figured out how to traverse space.
Valerie, I think you have opened a huge Pandora's box. Somebody's going to listen to this and pick up a whole different line of research as to the birthing process. What does it mean, the way children are made? Because now we are into technology, the spark, there are different bloodlines coming in through different seeds.
Yes. And it even says in the Hebrew Bible, Eve said, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord, or the El. The El gave me this baby that I'm having now. And that was Cain. Adam was Abel's father, not Cain's father. But Adam and Eve didn't have a concept of, that's my wife, stay away from my wife. That wasn't a concept, they were just created. Like, they don't know any of these things yet. They didn't have that concept that we have in our minds about Adam and Eve, a sacred couple. They were married by God. That's all doctrine that was made up and spoon-fed to us in church.
Yeah, that's doctrine, because there are cultures today that don't live like that. In parts of Central America, there are women with 2 or 3 husbands, and they're brothers.
Absolutely.
And they don't care. I watched this documentary, and the journalist was asking the woman, so aren't you concerned about whose child is who? And she's like, no, we don't think about that. We don't think like that.
Right. It doesn't matter.
This ownership thing does not exist. Owning a person and being tethered to them by, this kind of, it's different cultures. But I was thinking about also Mary.
Mary.
I'm just thinking of all these so-called miracles now, and I don't think I'll see miracles the same way. What happened with Mary? I know I've gone there because Gabriel was an angel. I can't see him the same as well.
And to me, Gabrielle is this very same Ninkharsag who visited many of the mothers. She visited all of the people that are very well renowned in the Hebrew Bible, people who are going to be some kind of great legendary hero or some kind of great, I guess you could say, they're going to be some kind of legendary person. They all had some kind of virgin mother story or barren mother story. So,
Sarah.
yeah. So right? They look at that and they say, oh, it's a trope, oh, that's how you can tell. Yeah, but I ask, where did the trope come from? Where did it come from?
Yeah, where did it come from? Yeah.
It came from the Anunnaki, because whenever they were going to bring someone on the planet that was going to do something specific, something special, they had a hand in the birth. So if you look at Abraham, his wife, Sarah, could not have children. And what happened? An angel came and visited. Mary could not have children. Well, Mary, not that she couldn't have children, she was a virgin. She was like, how am I going to have a baby? And who came to her? The same one, the angel Gabriel. This is changed now into a spiritual story. Oh, the angel came, it's a miracle. No, it was a genetic reproduction specialist that came that could make people pregnant without them having sex. It was technology. And we can do it today. We can get people pregnant that have never had sex. Can't we?
Yeah, it's true.
It's a very simple explanation for it. I don't see why this is strange. We do it all the time.
But yeah, it's difficult when your whole religious belief is based on the virgin birth, and you pray via Mary, the holy woman, but...
And I honor that. I honor everyone who has this beautiful relationship with the Virgin Mother and with the Mother, because it means something on a deeper level. It says something about innocence, and it says something about purity and beauty and perfection, right? That's what these things symbolize. So I honor that. I honor people. I'm not here to tear down people's religious experiences or to yank away.
No. I don't think you do that in any way. I mean, this platform is to facilitate dialogue, but I think it's important for us to ask these questions because it concerns us and it shapes our reality. Our belief system shape our reality. It shapes the decisions we make in life. It also shapes the decisions we make that may harm others or impact others. And so it's important to get this kind of knowledge that you're sharing and also look at things from different perspectives, to help us gain that insight. No, I don't think no, it's in the books. For me, it's like you're just making me remember this stuff. Yeah, it makes sense because the angel came to Mary. In the Bible, it does said, I will bring enmity between the serpent seed. They didn't say the serpent seed, but they said the seed of something and then the seed of something. That means these two are supposed to be not getting along.
Right, and they're different seeds.
They're different seeds. And then you've built it up. Now we've taken it further to where you started because, we've worked our way down. The two brothers coming down, they're already separate. One has a different agenda. Then you come down again, you have this serpent and this one again. The same agendas keep trickling down, you know? Yeah, and I think it explains where we are today.
Oh my goodness. And it gives us the keys to peace today. If we come out of the three Abrahamic religions have really fomented quite a bit of fear and war on this planet. And I think there's a way that we can do this peaceably. That people can be Islamic if they want, they can be Christian if they want, they can be Jewish if they want. Can we do this peaceably and really understand that this Yahweh character, this was an Anunnaki. This was not the Almighty God. And I feel like facts and truth help us come to the truth shall set you free, right? But first it pisses you off, as they say.
It really pisses you off.
It's difficult. Yet with an understanding of where we came from, we can come to peace. We can come to oneness on this planet. We can do it. I know we can do it. And I know we will do it. And that's why so many people are awakening to our true origins and to our true nature, understanding our nature is not sinful, as the religions have told us. Our nature is perfection.
Yeah, and it's important to understand this knowledge of what we've been talking about. Just like we know what a bird is. We know what we understand the bat, the cat, the goat, whatever. So we don't look at it like, oh my God, you're my enemy. You know, we know your nature, like a lion. I know your nature. If I mess with you too long, I know what will happen. So I understand your nature. And I think this is what you're trying to teach us. Once we understand the nature of the other and this nature of this one, then we know how to relate, you know, with each other. That's how I see it. You know, but I think we don't understand that they're different bloodlines. They're different seeds with different agendas working behind the scenes, causing the chaos.
Still to this day.
Yeah.
Still to this day. To add another piece to the creation story, here's the liberation from the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was walled. It was, for all intents and purposes, somewhat of a prison because you couldn't just walk out. It had the cherubim with a flaming, it had guardians. And it was walled. It was a walled garden. It wasn't just like, oh, there, you can go anywhere you want. Now, of course, it was vast, it was beautiful, it was luscious, there trees and so forth and so on. So, what is the whole Nahash thing? The Bible calls the serpent the Nahash. What is this whole thing with the serpent having a conversation in the Garden of Eden with Eve? That was Enki talking to Eve, telling Eve that you are in a prison, that the God who told you don't eat from this tree, so forth and so on, that's not going to happen. You don't really have the knowledge of where you are. This is where you are. You are in a walled garden. You can't leave. You're in a prison. He was the enlightener. This is Enki telling these things to, and Enki has always been a lover of humanity, always been on the side of humanity, but Enlil was not. Right? So he felt compassion, you know, maybe he loved his new creations, he wanted to see them thrive, and he told them, you know, y'all in prison. And so they realized, oh my goodness, and he also gave them the ability for sexual reproduction. And so all of this was pretty shocking. So of course, when Yahweh comes around, AKA the Anunnaki of the time, that was their boss that was watching over them, could have been Enlil, could have been another Anunnaki. Well, how do you know all of this? How do you know you're naked? You know, the God is walking in the breezy part of the day in the garden. God doesn't walk in gardens, the infinite source. The infinite source doesn't walk in a garden every afternoon at the breezy part of the day. It sounds very much like a humanoid being that is just walking through a garden. It sounds very normal. If we don't spiritualize it sounds very normal. There's a person that comes through here every day about the same time, breezy part of the day, just walking through the garden. Sounds very normal. There's nothing spiritual about that. And so they were put out. He was like, okay, well, y'all go and live your whole life. Do what you want to do. Yet, of course, they kept up with them, with Adam, with this couple. There were other couples, many other couples, many other couples. But they kept up with this couple and their children and their children's children and many stories. And there were many of these beings all over the planet. The planet was highly populated. So it wasn't like there was no one on the planet. So I guess that's a long way of saying that's how we got here, I guess.
Valerie, you just described us as hybrids.
Yeah, that's exactly what we are. We're a hybrid. Yeah, we're a hybrid species.
You know, I always...
And I'll give you another hint also. So I said, okay, well, let me go to science and let me see what Darwin is saying. And do you know that the scientists say that Darwin's, you know, evolutionary theory and origin of the species does not account for why about 200,000 years ago, the primate that was on the planet, the Homo species that was on the planet, made a significant leap to being this.
No one can explain it.
They can't explain that.
Nobody. And I think there's enough scientists who have thrown that theory out the window because they just said this is hogwash. Some are still fighting tooth and nail to make their point and their claim, but it can't be proved. It can't because no, it's too large of a leap.
Too huge of a leap.
Yeah,
we went from being sort of tall monkeys to being this.
No.
All of a sudden, building houses and agriculture and knowing farming and knowing agronomy and knowing animal husbandry and knowing metallurgy.
Yeah.
Like
even though we keep making these humongous leaps from horseback to planes, like in a very short span of time. And then again, from landlines to cell phones, which is like walking computers. And, the leaps, if you look at them, they're so exponential. They're just so drastic. And I think, there's so much we don't know because it doesn't add up. You know what they say, the math is not mathing at all.
The math is not mathing, not in the story that they told us that you
no
6,000 years old. No.
It's all. And you've been to Europe. I know you traveled so much. You've been to Europe. These cathedrals, nobody can build an ounce of them today. And when you see they're 1800, they're not so old, some of them. So where did the knowledge go? Surely this must be a manual that some architects say. Or what happened to the beings that built them versus the beings that are here now? The comprehension, the level of intellect,
Mm-hmm. And there are schools that kept ancient wisdom, like the Masons. And if you look at the history of Masons, it goes all the way back to the master stone builders, the ones who had the craft of architecture, and they also had other occult arcane knowledge that has been passed on. So you have schools, mystery schools, that have passed on this ancient knowledge and that are still among us.
Yeah, but they keep it hidden.
And most of the time they keep it hidden. Different people have different agendas and different reasons why they keep things hidden.
Yeah.
Some believe that humanity could not handle the truth. That if there were actual aliens walking around with us right now, people would lose it. And there would be anarchy, pandemonium, and even though all of our ancient legends from the Mahabharata, from throughout Africa, throughout India, the Indus Valley, throughout China, throughout Europe, all of our mythologies say, even Greek mythologies, that the gods used to walk among men.
Yeah.
They all say it.
They all say it, yeah.
That some were giant and some were this way. They described them as giants. Like, how else would a person who didn't really have all of the languaging? So for thousands of years, the Anunnaki walked among people. So it would not be completely foreign to humanity to have other beings with us. So we need to get over our fear as a human race and step into the global alliance, because how can we be in the galactic alliance of the federation of all the planets and who knows what we're missing out on? We could be missing out on a big galactic party, all the other beings are hanging out, and we earthlings, we're always
Maybe like the movie, not the video with Michael Jackson, the Thriller one. Did you see all the dead people were coming up and they were dancing?
Yeah.
You don't know. It's like, but
yeah,
it's,
we're clueless because the powers that be do not want to. Yet it's changing, because you see all of the information that's been coming out about UAPs, unidentified, anomalous phenomena.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes there are slow leaks, they kind of spoon feeding people.
So that people don't just lose it and just like, if an alien showed up just in the middle of Times Square, people would probably lose it.
Definitely.
Oh, but it happened in the States, in some mall.
Yeah, they say it happened in Miami.
Yeah, Miami, yes.
Yeah. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. People have been having experiences. Elijah was abducted, as you stated earlier. He was abducted on a spaceship. They knew he was going to go on a spaceship. It says it in the Bible that he was taken on the kavod of Yahweh, and they spiritualized it and made it look like God's glory and a chariot of God and so forth and so on. No, it was actual technology, and you can tell that it was technology because Ezekiel described it. And when this is the Ezekiel story, when a NASA engineer studied Ezekiel, he got a patent for Ezekiel's spaceship because he found it to be mathematically accurate. Ezekiel was extremely good. Ezekiel chapter 1, Ezekiel chapter 2. Ezekiel was extremely accurate at describing everything that he was seeing, but they want to tell us it was a vision and that, it was all spiritual. That's sort of like a gloss. And I just really want to know what's really going on, because the gloss there were cracks in the gloss and I could see through it. There was something else going on behind the gloss that they weren't telling us.
Yeah. I like the way you're telling us these things, because it's like you're telling us a story. I mean, you're making it so exciting, because and then it's it's serious stuff, but it's just the way you're really like bringing this on is just like, yeah, it's very amazing. And think about what you mentioned before, that Adam and Eve's garden. Everybody thinks, even I remember my parents had the book, when we're living in another city here in Denmark, sometimes people will knock on the door, the very religious one,
Jehovah's Witness, Valerie.
Exactly. Yes, that was the one.
I used to be
yeah. My
yes.
sister had actually a friend. She wasn't. I mean, and then she wasn't allowed to participate in birthdays, and they didn't have any birthday. And then these people always knock on the door. I remember, in the beginning, my parents didn't, they weren't so familiar with it, so they just came to Denmark. So they invited them in, and of course they were, so interesting to speak to my parents. And they gave them a book because, they were, they came from a Muslim, country, and then afterwards, my parents were like, nah, but I mean, if they're gonna knock on the door, they were looking at the little hole of the door. They didn't want to open the door, because my daddy was like, nah, I'm not gonna talk to these people. But I remember that the book that they gave my parents was like Adam and Eve, and everything was so super, like you were living just another planet. I mean, everything was so good. It was better on, I mean, from this planet. So.
It was better in the Garden of Eden.
No, but I mean, Garden of Eden was better than this world. The way they the way they explained it to my parents, and that the book. I remember the book that they gave my parents. Yeah. And imagine everybody thinks that Adam and Eve, and then they got children and their children and children, and then then we got people. People on the planet. This is how you were taught, or. Yeah, and then always thought that the garden was so super perfect. I didn't know that you weren't allowed to come out from that garden.
Oh,
you were kind of
it was walled. You couldn't just wander around the planet.
You were hostage there.
Yeah. But they didn't know it. I mean, they were newly formed beings.
Okay.
It was like a farm. It was like a farm where you're growing humans.
Yeah, because
Valerie. Yeah. Valerie, do you think that has something to do with Earth right now?
Something to do with...
Is Earth Eden? The whole Earth, is it the Garden of Eden?
Oh, you mean the Earth? Oh, yeah.
Interesting. I don't know the answer to that yet. I do know that this planet is a highly, what's the word I want to use? Desirable planet.
It's prime real estate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look at Mars and look at Earth.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it.
I know it doesn't look that attractive. I mean, I'm sorry, Elon.
And they're trying
I
to
don't
see
think
if they
people
can.
are going to join you to Mars.
Right. And you know, the Anunnaki, they had a station on Mars. They had a way station on Mars. Because Mars is not that far away. And for them, they probably could get to Mars a whole lot faster than we can, because we haven't advanced our technology yet.
Yeah.
Even though they say when we really capture the understanding of wormholes and gravity, we'll be able to go to Jupiter for the weekend. That's what they're saying.
I think they have that technology. You know, Valerie, I smell a rat sometimes, because when I look at the jumps we make, it's like they're just waiting for humanity to be ready to receive the technology. You know, I get this sense, like, you know, if you brought the cell phone too early, maybe some cultures would have said, oh my God, that's some witchcraft, dark magic, black, you know. So I think they wait for certain windows of opportunity and they unleash it, you know, because it just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? How fast the technology is evolving, you know, and that we'll be able to go to Jupiter.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense, because if you think about the way quantum, some of the ways that they describe it scientifically, like if you picture a hose, you have one end at one end, you know, you can move through a hose and you can just go the long way. But what if you could just bend the hose, like bending time and space, and put the two ends together? You could immediately hop from one place to another place instantaneously, which is maybe what a lot of these advanced civilizations can do. They probably can travel a lot faster than us, yet we haven't broke in our minds yet the idea that something can move faster than the speed of light. So you're right, Faith. Our minds have to even believe that we can even do things like this, which is why most of the advances that have come from humanity, look at how many of them came in the dream state. And look at how many of them came in altered states of consciousness, which we do know that the Anunnaki were able to infiltrate dreams.
The ones able to do what?
Infiltrate your dreams. They were able to come into the dream state.
Oh, yeah. So, I just think, this is something, because, you know, when you were talking about the God who, the whole story of how one God, they were deciding to make us in their image and likeness. And then, you know, I'm just trying to put things together how I received it. And Enki was kind of like giving like upgrades secretly.
Yes.
I said,
he did not have permission for that.
He didn't have permission. And I think that he gave too many upgrades. And I feel this, I'm just a thought that just came through, that Enlil and the other crew, I think they came and reversed the upgrades. That's why
did reverse. They absolutely did. You're absolutely right, because that's why after the flood, they said they're going to cap it at 120. That people are not going to be able to live past about 120. They shortened the telomeres, so they went and did another biological tweak, because they said these people are living too long, over almost 1,000 years. We can't have that. So they tweaked it down after the flood, and no one could ever just explain why before the flood these people were living so long, and why after the flood these people were living very short lives.
Shorter, yeah.
Comparatively.
And even the abilities people have, you can see some people. I always say these are the people who their readjustment didn't go through, because they have like the Tibetan monks. I'm like, okay, you lucky bastard. Like, you didn't get all the adjustments.
Yeah, all the adjustments didn't take quite.
Yeah. Because some people have, all these incredible abilities,
Yes.
And they almost, for lack of better words, they're supernatural. They're almost godlike abilities. You know what I mean? But it shows the potential of the human being. You know what I mean? And then I also think that these gods, the God of your Bible, the one you said is angry, it's also a jealous God.
That's what they
So
say.
clearly,
But
this jealous
the
God wouldn't want us
universal,
to have these abilities.
right. How could the universal source be jealous? Jealous of what? Because the
Yeah.
universal source is all. So what could it be jealous of?
Valerie, yeah, you got me thinking. I think there is more to these codes that we have as human beings, because for a whole God to be jealous, and when you read through when he's describing thou shalt not, this is like, it's like a threatened, somebody who's threatened, by this apparently small being. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
interesting.
right. And when we consider it, all of these human characteristics don't apply to the infinite source. And if they did, we're in trouble.
Ooh.
But can I ask you something?
Sure.
So so within today, like, do you believe in anything? Like, do you have any beliefs?
Oh, that is an excellent question, Shah. That is an
You
excellent
know?
question. That is an excellent question. I absolutely do.
Okay.
Well, let me back up. I tried very hard to get rid of all my beliefs, so I don't really want to have beliefs. What
Okay.
I know is that the infinite source that is all is an energy. It's energy. It's all energy.
Okay.
It's an
Okay.
energy field. It's exactly like what physics says, the 0
Mhm.
point field. It is intelligent, it is love, it is infinite energy from which we all emerge.
Okay.
And so I am very, very much not an atheist. I would not be an atheist because I've just seen too many things to
I know.
Yeah, I understand.
that's not my personal path.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very much into magic. And for me, magic, because I'm a witch, I practice magic and witchcraft. For me, magic is very scientific. So it's, you do this, this will happen. You do this,
Right.
this will happen. It's very
This
scientific.
happens.
It does have part art as well,
Mm-hmm.
yet it's very scientific, and there we have reasons on why it works. So if I can see a reason why something would work, oh, okay, well that makes sense. It has to add up for me. If it doesn't add up, then I'm likely to throw it out. And if it cannot stand up to scrutiny and penetrating questions, then is that a doctrine that I want to hold? And the answer is
Right.
no.
Yeah. Okay. Because, that's very interesting. That's very nice because, some people, they do believe, or, in our culture is always like, oh, I pray to God that, these things happens. And I do respect the people that, believe in something. And even if you're very religious or you're not, or you just think that you should just be a good person inside and that is it, so it's very nice.
Yeah. And to all our listeners who might get triggered by the word witch, it simply means wise one.
That's all it means.
It just
Wise
means
one.
wise one. And, she talked about, witchcraft. Witchcraft, the old words of all these stuff was science, and spirituality is science. It's ancient science, it's just gotten a modernized word. So I hope that some of you are a bit more calm,
I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
if you look at the book of Enoch, we can end on this note.
Yes, we can.
That the book of Enoch actually speaks of when the Watchers came. The Bible calls them fallen angels, right? Remember, that's not the Bible saying it because it didn't originally say that. This is what it has been translated and fed to us as, okay? The original words are malachim, cherubim. None of these words mean angels, but people have over years translated them and fed to us that this is an angelic being, and they built up that doctrine that they have wings and this and this and so on and so, because they could fly. So naturally you would think, well, if they can fly, they must have wings, right? They wouldn't think it was technology. Well, when we look at the book of Enoch, the Watchers taught the women spellcrafting, enchantments, charms, herbology, makeup, creating hues of makeup to put on, lipstick. They taught them all kinds of things. And remember, it says that in the Bible, right? And it says in the book of Enoch as well, that the quote unquote fallen angels taught humanity all these different things, supposedly that humanity was not supposed to know. But humanity was pretty ignorant at that point. We didn't really know much of anything.
Wow. Yeah. It's just how so much of this knowledge has been distorted, especially the words. And I've learned there's an inversion happening. A lot of the words that are seen as negative are very powerful words. They usually don't mean what we have been taught they mean, and then people go like this, and I'm like, no. It's not what you think, But Valerie, thank you so much for coming. I absolutely love how your mind works. And I love how you go to places and you just zoom into what I think is the ancient language, the language of the rocks, the hills, the mountains, the sky, the water. As you were talking, I was just seeing all this coming together, with your eyes, because you're taking us from, you literally took us on a trip with you, from Egypt and to Mayan.
to Adam and Eve's garden.
I know.
And to the aliens. And then when you guys were talking that some people have seen some aliens in Miami, I was just thinking maybe it was in a mall and people were just walking and there was some kind of like creatures were just walking there, But this is what I also told you just before, that the way you're telling us some serious things, but the way you're telling us, your experience, the things that it's very interesting.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I think it has to do with your throat chakra. You're a communicator.
All right.
It comes out really well.
And one of my gifts is enchantress, is a storyteller, to weave a story and draw people into the story. This is one of my gifts. Because the story helps us to learn.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, so you come from a line of orators.
Yes, and I'm very thankful.
Yeah. So once again, thank you, Valerie. I'll let you have the last word. Of course, to all our listeners, please take some time and go into the description and get Valerie's information. Look into it yourself and it will begin to make sense, because, we can't put all the knowledge in 1.5 hours, but all her information will be in the description and links to her website. And she's an author, as well. And she's written several books. We have a lot of authors on this platform, and Valerie is one of them. Yeah. So we'll put all her information in the description. So make sure you stop by, take a look, and if it piques your interest, go for it. So Valerie, I'll let you have the last word before we head out.
That's easy. Ye are gods. Just remember that.
Yeah. Okay, Shaz, anything?
Thank you so much for coming to our, to our show. It's been an honor to have you again, and we'd like to have you more and more times. I just learned so many things today. Because because I think sometimes you don't think about stuff, and it also depends, like, who is that tells you, or the stuff you just mentioned or talked about. So you made it very interesting.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So to all our listeners, that was our smart sister, Reverend Valerie Love Kaisi, hanging out with us on Sisterhood Smarts. Until next time, goodbye.